Hi, everyone. Our topic for today for this podcast is therapy. Therapy is something that has been a close part of my life for the longest period of time. I'm generally not the kind of guy who even talks about taking therapy. It's been my personal belief that therapy is a very private thing, and you should not even share with anyone the fact that you're taking therapy. And what you talk between you and your therapist should strictly remain between you. But I've come to change my mind on that a little bit. And one of the reasons is because I've started meeting some amazing people who work in this field and who feel it is important for people to be much more open about the fact that they are taking therapy because this will encourage a lot of other people who might be scared or feel embarrassed or feel it is some source of taboo. So, in some ways, this is also my confession and coming out. Yes, I do take therapy. I've been taking it from a very long time. My school, St. Xavier's Boys Academy, we were fortunate enough to have a very good therapist, and I've been working with her and a few others over the period of time. So, I guess from a personal basis, I would say, just like many other things, I think of therapy as a technology in some ways that has benefited us a lot and that has been developed over the years. And today we are very privileged to have somebody who's perhaps used this technology, learned how it uses, how it can help people, how to develop it, how to add her own flavor to it. Today we have Niyati Gandhi with us, a therapist and a very good friend, and also an even better friend's wife, which makes her an even better friend than the original friend. I was intentionally hoping to confuse you guys with this. So, Niyati, it is so great to have you here today with us in the studio.
Thank you so much, Vikram.
Um,
So,
yeah, so I think if you could start a little bit by just giving us a very brief professional about your background and also a little bit of your personal background, who you are, where you come from, and where you are right now, and these things.
absolutely. Uh, First, thank you so much for inviting me, Vikram. It's a pleasure. And yes, mental health is a topic I love chatting about. I do it day in and day out. So, thank you. Um, I'll start personally first. So, I'm Niyati Gandhi. Grew up in Mumbai, India. Stayed there, completed my bachelor's, master's till probably age 21, 22, and then moved to the US. I did my master's there, worked there for a little bit, came back to India, got married, stayed in Mumbai for 8 years, and now I've been in Canada for the past 9 years. You do the math, you'll get to know how old I am. But yes, so personally, that's been my journey. I love the mountains. I am a mountain person. I wear many hats. I am a clinical psychologist, which I'll talk mostly throughout our time today. But I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter. I am my person. I do try and get a little time for myself to still feel who I am in the midst of all these hats. I'm a dog mother as well, and I'm a homemaker as well. I do all those things that a homemaker does at home, and yeah, so that's a bit personally. Professionally, I am a clinical psychologist, registered in Ontario, Canada. I am in Toronto right now as we speak. I'm also registered in India with Rehabilitation Council of India, RCI, as a psychologist, and I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor in simple language a psychotherapist in California, US. And right now in Toronto, I run a group practice. It's called Therapy Villa Psychology Services. And yeah, I work with adults, couples, and my primary, my areas are anxiety, depression, trauma, relationship challenges, and everything that comes under that gamut. So that's a little bit about me professionally.
I think internally in my head, I was going anxiety, relationship, trauma. Like, fantastic. This is a checkbook for pretty much all myself. Like, is there anything that you've missed out which is not relevant to me?
A lot that I've missed out. Those are not my areas of expertise, and I really believe a therapist should operate in their area of competence and not venture trying to, attend to all kind of mental health issues when they're really not very well trained or experienced in.
I think that's a good thing. In terms of a lot of people want to be everything to everyone. So
Yes.
I think it's good to hear that. And I guess when you mentioned about not asking about your age, I'm like, I don't think I will ever ask a therapist about her age because the questions that she will ask me back will go way beyond what is my age. So I'm like, yeah, I am not even touching that live wire.
I think I say that also because a lot of people who walk into the room, and I'm a short person, I'm just
Okay.
5 feet, and when somebody sees me, now I think age does show on my face, but when previously when somebody has seen me even 5 years ago, they can pass me off as somebody who's not experienced, doesn't have life experience. And I think sometimes for people it's important to relate to somebody that they
Mhm.
perceive that have that that this person has had life experience. Although I always go down and say that a lot of things we all cannot experience, but there's a lot of training and understanding that a therapist can come from, which people they need to account for, that there is some training and learning and knowledge that even a young therapist is operating from, and not only life experience.
I think you've raised something extremely important here, and we will come back to this in more detail. Just wanted to share something. So recently, I had spoken at my B School's event. I was called for some talk on what comes next after formal education.
Mm-hmm.
And I had raised this thing of often I'll get these queries about how do I become a stand-up comedian. And I was like, okay, I can tell you the usual, watch a lot of stand-up, perform as many times as you possibly can, and whatever. I'm like, but there is also that element of live a life so that you have content worth talking about, right? So, in that regard, I will want to come back to this question in more detail about lived experience, what do you call it, as at the same time, technical education, professional experience, that how these different spheres interact in terms of how therapy takes place and the quality of the interaction. But before we get into that, to set some context for our audience, you can tell us a little bit about the different designations in the field, because when you said clinical psycho, again, my mind is okay, how is it different from a therapist? How is that different from a counselor? So, what are the different designations in the field? How do they differ between India and the Western markets? And what is DSM exactly in this context?
Absolutely. Very important question. And I think it's very important for people to understand these different terminologies. I'm going to, for example, for this conversation, I'm going to use India and I'm going to use Canada and registrations in these two countries. I do want you to know that Canada can represent the North American belt or even some of the European countries. How a therapist is, how a mental health professional receives a designation, and what is the capacity with which they can practice. Um, which very sadly right now India does not have those tight regulations or even mental health titles. So I'll start with more universal first, which is Canada, US, and a lot of the Western European countries as well. Um, so somebody who's a psychologist, and I'll only talk psychologist. I differentiate it from psychiatry or a psychiatrist. A
Okay.
psychiatrist is a doctor, a medical doctor who will prescribe medications, who does not always get into therapy. Therapy is when you're talking about your problem and getting through a solution model. Um, A psychiatrist will hear your concerns, will understand, you're presenting your symptoms, and then prescribe medication based on that. That's why when you go to a psychiatrist, you'll often see your meetings are very short. They're very medical. They will not ask you about, tell me about your younger years, tell me about your relation with your parents, your siblings, your friendships, your school experiences. They will not get into that information. They rather will stay in the present, tell me the history of your symptoms. Based on that, they will prescribe medication, and they are the ones who are in charge of managing your medication. Um, Moving to therapy, right? Now, the highest designation is of a psychologist. And again, don't get me wrong when I put this hierarchy. I'm putting the hierarchy because education defines certain titles. But an experienced therapist can really help you with a lot of kind of issues that you have. But I'll start with a psychologist because psychologist has the most tight, what do you say, registration criteria.
Mhm.
Most psychologists worldwide, either they've done their PhD in clinical psychology or social, industrial, whatever the field of psychology is, and they come with residency experience in their program, and then they are registered after giving certain exams. That this is the whole process for them to be registered as a psychologist. Another route for being registered as a psychologist, which is in Canada, is master's level. So you do your
Mhm.
master's, you do 4 years or whatever the number of hours needed. In Ontario, it's 6,000 hours.
Wow.
Uh, and then you do one more year of supervised practice, which is an addition of 1,500 hours. You give your exams. After that, you are a psychologist from a master's route. So you can be master's or PhD depending on the country of registration, but there's a strict supervision received for you to be called a psychologist. And in most of these countries, a psychologist can assess. So all the psychometric testing,
Mhm.
psychological testing that people do, most psychologists have the license to do that. They assess, they diagnose, and they also perform psychotherapy, right? I'm going to differentiate between a psychotherapist and just psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is our talk therapy.
Okay.
People know CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, they know Freud, psychoanalysis, and a lot of somatic school, a lot of different schools are there. They all come under psychotherapy philosophies or school of thought, so
Okay.
as to say, right? So that's a psychologist. Second is a psychotherapist or a licensed counselor. Um, yeah, pretty much those are the two terms which are used across. When I say I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor in California, I'm a psychotherapist, a counselor in California. I'm not registered as a psychologist in California.
Okay.
In Ontario, I'm registered as a psychologist. So that's the difference. Now, as a counselor, they can perform, counselor or psychotherapist, they can perform psychotherapy, which is
Mhm.
they are not allowed to give out a diagnosis, or they are not allowed to do a detailed testing, personality testing that a psychologist does. And yeah, so they can do therapy, they are trained in therapies, they can do different kind of, so CBT, all those therapies that I named, for example, they can perform that. And that's that they are generally masters level,
Mhm.
right? Masters is like a minimum that you
Okay.
do. With a bachelor's, you can't really practice as a therapist because bachelor's
Okay.
does not give you that foundation. You at least need a master's, right?
Okay.
And then they can become a psychotherapist if they want to.
Okay.
Now going to in India. So these are the two. Okay. These are the two broad categories. In India, counselor, therapist, mental health therapist, psychologist are very interchangeably and loosely used. Uh, I think still most there is RCI is a registration body, but it's Rehabilitation Council of India. So a lot of them don't recognize the different fields, social, child, adults. They don't tell you, okay, what's your specialization and do you work with children? Do you work with adolescents, adults? So it's a lot of mismatch that, and when I say regulations, I really put ethics on a high platform. People come to a therapist because of confidentiality,
Mm.
because they know that things will remain secure and safe. Right now, all these ethical guidelines are not established. There is no law around it. That
So,
if
sorry to interrupt here. Are you telling me that if a therapist, if one goes to one today in India, and if they breach confidentiality, there are no professional repercussions on them or at all, none at all
no,
except reputation. Wow, that's incredible.
no, no.
Wow.
So let's say here, if I breached confidentiality, my client can go to my regulatory body. So the first line of repercussion or penalty would be my license will be revoked. I will not be able to practice in the profession. If it is something extreme, right? Like somebody said, I'm suicidal and I'm going to act on it right now. I have an obligation to reach out to crisis management at this point. Mobilize police, mobilize hospitalization. I have the right to do that over here.
Mm.
In India, none of this is regulated. So if somebody tells me I'm suicidal and I did not act on it as my professional duty, nobody can come to me and question me, why didn't you take an action? They can question me, but legally nobody can do anything because there is no system where any ethical question can be raised, right? And again, you have to understand each state is different. Maharashtra is different, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Delhi, like how things are practiced are different, right?
Mhm.
The government body is different. So, uh, some of the regulated, what do you say, guideline has to come from state perspective also, which is not present at all in India. Now there are some movements going on. So in Maharashtra, there are one or two bodies. I'm not the right person to name them because
Mm.
I've been in Canada for 9 years now. But they are now trying to get things. There is a mental health act
Okay.
in but now they're trying to get things more streamlined, but authorities have to comply. So it's not it like if you and I are talking, you will tell me, listen, this is the need of the hour, you should do it right now. Why is it delayed? Right?
Mhm.
It's such a big deal in getting these guidelines because India has amazing psychologists.
Mhm.
Education, in some universities it's good, in some it's bad, but so is like all universities in the world are very similarly.
Mhm.
So, but India has some amazing brains that they can really put a framework in place,
Okay.
which is still missing.
So it's the classical Indian thing where we have a bunch of highly talented people, a few institutions that are great, a few intentions in terms of creating laws that work, but somewhere in the middle, some mechanics is missing, which is the case in a lot of areas in India's regulatory framework in
Yeah,
general, right?
yeah, yeah. It's sad, because there is a boom in mental health. People are recognizing I need to talk to somebody.
Mm.
People are really reaching out, and I have so many people who come to me and tell me, listen, my trust is breached. My friend and I go to the same therapist.
Mm.
Now, technically, you can. There are there
Okay.
are there are different guidelines. Like personally, I would not see if I'm, for example, Vikram, if I'm seeing you in
Mhm.
therapy, I will not see your family members
Okay.
because there's a conflict of interest. That's an ethical guideline which every
Okay.
therapist knows.
Okay.
right? But if it's a friend, I may consider, given
Mhm.
that what you're discussing with me is very different.
Mhm.
And,
Understood.
there is so much of breach of confidentiality that has happened, right? They have told me that I have gone to my therapist, and my therapist is telling me, hey, your friend, how is she doing? Has she not?
Mhm.
And I'm not even supposed to acknowledge that I know your friend is coming to me.
Mhm.
So it's just it's sad to see.
I guess it's the same thing, right? So, like when we say, people are pretending to be therapists in general, but the same with therapists also, somebody is not a good or a professionally qualified person simply because they are therapists. They can be just as unprofessional or uncaring, even those within the profession. It does boil down to a lot to the underlying person beyond the title and degree as well, I suppose, up to a certain point.
Absolutely. And you know that's why, because um there are no guidelines as such, no?
Mm,
So even the universities, they don't teach ethics that
mm.
strongly. It's just a subject, right?
Okay.
You not really, like in all these countries, we are tested. There's a special exam on understanding ethics and implication of if ethical principle is broken, ethical and legal implications both.
Mm,
But because there is nothing in India, there's no exam. I'm not really focusing on a need for
mhm.
exam, but there's nothing that's measuring your knowledge on ethical jurisprudence or legal framework for mental health. It's
Understood.
just a subject. It's just a chapter. Let me put it that way. It's
Mhm.
just a chapter. These are the guidelines. That's it. It's not
Understood.
really shown how to use them. So I am not even blaming a lot of therapists because they are just doing what's taught to them, right?
Mhm.
Today, I think I am fortunate that I've had exposures of different countries and I can really put a framework and understand the implication of breaking those ethical guidelines. But somebody who's not been outside will not know. So I
Understood.
guess in that sense, we can't blame them, but there's
Mhm.
this harm done. Very
Understood.
unintentionally, this is harm that you're
Mm.
doing to a
Uh, when you mentioned about the ethics of getting people, whether they are related, not related, so I think that's also so much of it is also down to ethics or behavior of the client as well, right? So when and why do clients typically come to you? Like, is there a right and a wrong reason to do it? I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you came. This will help you. Or I think you definitely have the wrong idea of what you think this can do for
very good question. Uh, there is actually no right or wrong reason to come to therapy. And it is a very, I think media portrayed in India as well, that पागल इंसान जाता है थेरेपिस्ट के पास पागल
you.
है क्या
Yeah.
very very common phrase uh, and that is so not true. Personally, that is also very derogatory
Mhm.
because फॉर मी अगर कोई पागल है और जा रहा है दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, जाना चाहिए, राइट?
Mhm.
But yeah, people come to me or people come to a therapist not just when there is something absolutely wrong, but they come for, oh, you know what, I really want to work on my personality, right?
Mhm.
I want to work on how can I really organize my thoughts better. I am actually doing a good job at, balancing my home and family life. But now at this point in life, I'm really struggling. I'm really feeling a lot of anger, or I'm feeling some feelings of resentment. These are simple concerns that, on one side, it can be passed as अरे इसमें क्या है, लाइफ है, ये तो होता रहता है, आगे
Mhm.
बढ़ते हैं. What happens is, if you have felt the need, I want to reach out to a professional that time, get some guidance on how I can organize my thoughts differently, how I can manage this little it's not a crisis, but a little challenge that's showing up in
Mhm.
balancing my life. And if I can get some tools, why not?
Mhm.
Rather than having this built for another 2 years, and then now that little, what do you say, mole has become a hill, right,
Ah,
within your
okay.
own system. So might as well treat it or find a solution. Not now, I am not somebody who will say therapist ke paas hi jao. If you
Mhm.
have somebody personally in your life that you can confide in, you can talk about this problem, they can really, with their wise mind, give you a good, approach. Why not? There are lots of self-help books, there are lots of self-help material. I'm not somebody who will say don't reach out for self-help. It's great if you're reaching out for self-help. That shows how interested you are in your own well-being,
Mhm.
right? Which is amazing. But yes, if you have tried, and my assumption is you have tried all these things before somebody comes to a therapist. So they've already
Okay.
gone through going to somebody that they think is a wise mind, reading something, looking at some content. AI has become our new therapist. So
Mhm.
going to AI and then coming to a therapist because they have now felt that I have done all these things, it's not helped me, and now I need an approach. So the problem could be anything. It could be something small, or it could be something that comes from a heredity base as well, right?
Okay.
So जो पागल हम बोलते हैं in our language, we call it mania or hypomania. It's part of a mood disorder, a mood spectrum, right?
Okay.
Low side is depression, as we call, and the high side is mania or hypomania, as
Mhm.
DSM defines it. And
Okay.
DSM is Diagnostic Statistical Manual.
Okay.
It is a full guidebook of mental health disorders, which all of us, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, all mental health professionals really look into because it talks about symptoms. It talks about, acha, if you have depression, these symptoms based on research can tell you that this is depression and उसमें भी होता है mild है moderate है severe है, so there is a range, right? But if you don't meet everything from that, and you've just had a couple of days where you're like, listen, I'm really down, I'm not going to call you a depressed person, because that little
Mhm.
fluctuation in mood everybody experiences in their day.
Okay.
So we also have that as our, we call it our mental health bible, because it talks about most of the mental health disorders, or all mental health disorders that exist or have been come under research. um, but yeah, so problems could be severe level as well. It could be schizophrenia, it could be psychosis level as well, right? Those do warrant for medication, those do warrant for some deeper treatment approach. But yeah, it could be something very, very small, everyday adjustment related area, right? Or it could be something which has a medical, hereditary, deeper component, and we see all kind of people who reach out for mental health support. So
Okay.
not just pagal hai.
Ah,
Right?
understood. So one question I had here is there often like what we call an iceberg, if you've seen those memes, right? That what is there on the surface or versus what is the gigantic thing? Is that more often than not the case that I've come to you that, okay, I am struggling to write a new bit on stand-up material, and it ends up with, well, this is why you did not end your relationship with your girlfriend properly. I mean, does that you started with one thing and ended up at completely other? How often does that happen, or is that
I
more?
won't lie, it happens way often than one thinks.
Okay.
Um, See, and again, what I'm going to say is people come with goal, and as a therapist, I really zoom into their goal. If anybody comes, even if I go to a therapist, there's always going to be a problem in my foundation, and it
Mhm.
can be highlighted and work needs to be done. Right? It's like तुम मैग्नीफाइंग ग्लास लेके अपना घर देखोगे तो every corner you'll feel अच्छा, this needs to be touched up, this needs to be redone. But you're
Mhm.
not going to do that, right? अगर my window needs repair, then I'm going to focus on my window.
Mhm.
So as a therapist, then what a, a good therapist would do is look at your goal. You have come because you can't really, you have a block in thinking about how to move forward with my
Hmm.
creative, right? We're going to go to the root of that. And जो भी related roots है, we are going to touch on that. We're going to work on that. And then we're going to come to, okay, what's creating this block for me,
Okay,
right? So there is always, always something that you can keep working in, but I'm not going to say be in therapy forever. I'm going to say this
correct.
is the goal. We've attended to your goal. Now these areas are there. It's up to you. If this feels pressing to you, we can. If it doesn't, you have the insight now. You can do it on your own. You do it.
Understood. Also wanted to ask you something. Like I think this is something we touched upon earlier, and throughout this theme, as we said, we are sitting at a very interesting intersection. On one hand, yes, people are much more aware. They are talking about it. Like a couple of friends my age says that she's so happy with Gen Z employees in her team who openly talk about my therapist. I went to therapy. The other harm, of course, or challenge downside being that there's also this thing of turning into a pop culture thing. Oh, my mom's a narcissist. Oh, I've got ADHD. Or a random agony aunt's turning into giving you advice on relationships, on your sex life without being, qualified or trained. And have speaking with such confidence, which I also think is a little bit of an India-centric thing. Also, in India, we our confidence is almost inversely proportional to our actual knowledge and experience in the field. I don't know if this is a general trend across humanity, but it certainly seems to be the case in Indian culture. I mean, what do you feel about that?
Very, very important and a good question in the age of social media. Side note, this is why I'm now starting my own, what do you say? I'm going to be talking on Instagram, which I hate,
Okay.
but I think there is a need to give some real what field knowledge.
Hmm.
Uh, there are people, like you said, no agony aunt, or there are people who've done like a 6 month course in mental health, and they are like, oh, I'm a counselor,
Hmm.
right? 2 months or just life experience, and they're like, oh, I'm a counselor. So what happens is, of course, there's a difference between somebody who studied for 7, 8 years and somebody who's done 6 months. The understanding and evolution, understanding how humans evolved from a very developmental perspective, and understanding that certain things are normal. Narcissism is actually a healthy trait,
Okay.
right? Narcissism is healthy ego,
Okay.
which everybody should have. It's like your backbone. अगर ego गिर गया, then you're like mental health wise, uh, equate that to your self esteem, self confidence, right?
Okay.
If you don't have that, you are going to feel deep and down. So
Okay.
if the harm of pop culture is, if they'll see some traits of narcissism, then that person becomes a narcissistic, right? Or narcissistic personality disorder आ जाता है, NPD.
Correct. Correct.
And that is actually harmful.
Okay.
Right. So, yes, pointing out the good part of pop culture is people are talking about mental health, right? There's this vocabulary which is floating around. Everybody understands trauma, attachment style, attachment issues. People understand, which is great because back in the day, people were not even looking at those areas. So,
Mhm.
that's a positive. But the harm is beginning to throw diagnoses, beginning to
Okay.
throw that, "Hey, this is what a narcissistic mom looks like, or a
Correct.
parent looks like, and these are the traits." But
Mhm.
listen, a healthy person with a healthy ego will have those traits. So, what do you have to really understand and assess is the extent of functionality versus dysfunctional, normality versus this doesn't come in the normal range,
Mhm.
right? So that is that's very harmful, in my perspective, कि सबको ये diagnosis डाल दिया, right? This is like
Correct.
anybody, you read any symptoms, you will like, अरे हाँ ये तो मुझे है ही,
Ah,
but
correct. Correct.
that
Which is
doesn't mean,
almost, yeah, which is
yeah.
almost the same as people do for physical symptoms also. Like I remember reading this book, I think about a Sydney Sheldon book based on doctors, and they said after the first day, almost every doctor, this was the common conversation, bro, look at my throat. I'm sure I've got bronchi. Even the doctor interns were like, so mentally caught up, convinced that they had half the diseases that they were studying. So it's a
There's
very,
a term for it. It's
yeah.
called medical syndrome. So
Okay.
anybody who's reading and learning about a disease or disorder, mental health,
Yes.
body, right? They are going to relate to it and they're like, "Arey, I'm feeling this. Do I have this?" Right?
Correct. Correct.
So it's like, okay, I'm having these symptoms of depression. That means I am depressed. No,
Ah.
but you're functional, right? One of
Ah.
the
Okay.
biggest marker of a disorder is functionality being impaired,
Okay.
right? I mean, there are many things. Functionalities is one aspect. But yes, coming back to pop culture, I think that's one of the biggest downside that even non-trained, what do you say, humans who know a little bit about mental health
Mhm.
portray themselves as a mental health professional and
Mhm.
will say sometimes honestly very stupid things, Vikram. And
Understood.
it saddens me to hear that. And this is what people are, and they have a good fan following also now,
Ah.
right?
Correct.
Because they are so frequent and talking. एक बार कुछ अच्छी बात कर ली and then rest all is junk. Then they have a good fan following, and then people really take that advice to their personal life.
Explain to me the psychology of the fans and followers. What is happening there? Where are these digital ones and zeros becoming so? Are people like, I see so many zeros and ones, therefore I should follow this? So these are zeros and ones, right? These are not real. Like the follower counts eventually are just zeros and one. Is that thing gets missed that they mistake zeros and ones for reality? Am I making? Uh,
E- if I'm understanding you right, see, as humans, you come with experience. All human experience is not wrong, right?
okay.
Theory is made from human experience and
Hmm.
human. So coming back to the pop culture or pop psychologist or therapist, there is something that they are imparting valuable, right? It's
Okay.
not like they are saying all shit only. They are saying
Hmm.
some things that really make sense. So people who have really heard that, they started believing that, oh yeah, this person has a good point.
Hmm.
And one or two posts or two or three posts can be really healthy coming from some thought scientific base,
Okay.
right? Then rest or so then now they have already clicked follow. So now that number has increased, right?
Okay.
And then you are believing everything that they're saying. Now that you're following, you're going to see their feed every now and then.
Hmm.
And you're going to start believing, Arey, but this, like I know sometimes I hear, I see a lot of couples. And then I hear couples saying that, oh, remember I sent you that Instagram reel? We are not doing
Hmm.
that, right?
Okay.
But of course, you're not doing that. You're a human.
Hmm.
Instagram reel, like they show kids who are like 5 years making their own breakfast and doing things independently. And then the couple is really fighting that, oh, our 5-year-old is not doing that.
Hmm.
But that 5-year-old on Instagram reel is trained to do that. That is the only job that guy is given so that they can create a good Instagram reel. So
Yes.
now these, and then the father talks about some parenting concept there, right?
Correct.
Just a father talking from his experience. But listen, this is not applicable to the general population.
Hmm.
Yes, independence is encouraged, but ऐसा नहीं that they will start making their own breakfast, pancakes and all that. So yeah, these are things that people then follow and people fight over. अपना बच्चा
Yes.
ऐसा क्यों नहीं?
Understood. For me, it's kind of strange when I'm listening to this at 5-year-old making breakfast. I'm like, I'm 43 years old, and eggs and toast is still the best that I can do, even now.
Yeah, it's really people start taking that Instagram reel as the norm, right? It's
Okay.
not the, and this is what people are not explaining in the
Okay.
reel. So if I'm giving an advice or so pop psychologist therapist is giving an advice, they're not really explaining that this is a good to have, this is not normal
Mhm.
population ka experience.
Understood. Now, tell us a little bit about what is happening to us when we are vertical scrolling with autoplay. कभी funny video आ रहा है, फिर sad आ रहा है, फिर celebrity आ रहा है, फिर ये आ रहा है. Then suddenly you're looking at this, then suddenly there's something that's titillating, something making you angry, something making you sad, something making you lost, and it's just going relentlessly in a vertical format, not even horizontal. We read this way, right? Like we don't read in
Yeah.
a vertical crazy format like this, So what is happening to our brains, minds? Like I had this thought, tell me if it makes sense, that human beings are not in a single sheet, right? We are 3D dimensional. Here we are seeing a thin screen. I don't know how this is coming across on audio, and
Yeah.
making it feel like it's an entire human being, which it is not. We are just seeing a slice of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Human beings are not on top of each other in a stack
Yeah.
like we see while
Yeah.
vertical scrolling, right? There's so distortion happening at from reality, even visual reality. Forget others at so many levels. What's happening to our minds and our perception of reality and emotions when this is going on?
So one of the biggest thing is that okay, lot of factors. When the screen time increases, there is isolation, which
Okay,
feeds more screen time, right?
okay,
Uh, I see a lot of people with addiction to any kind of addiction, not just alcohol, but it could be porn addiction, it could be social media addiction, gambling, any
mm,
kind of addiction. One of the two big things that come up is isolation.
mm,
And when I say isolation, is isolation from human connectedness,
okay,
right? The second thing is, of course, the need for immediate gratification because it's too isolating. It's too much to just live in my own head and work things out. There's so much of anxiety to associate with other people, but
mhm,
need for we are born social, right?
okay,
We are also born with us being attached to our mothers, to the umbilical cord. We weren't
mhm,
born as an egg thrown out and now like grow on your own. we
mhm,
we were really born with connectedness, so it is a part of human value, human facet, human need, that it's important that you honor that and you give yourself that. But when we are isolated, the need for that the scrolling is part of instant gratification,
okay,
right? It is part now it has also trained your mind, from a neuro perspective, to shift your attention in that few seconds,
mhm,
right? So now your need for gratification has increased from, let's say, 5 minutes or 10 minutes to 30 seconds, 1 minute. I cannot focus on one thing for more than 1 minute. I need something else that stimulates my brain even more. So I don't really have a viewpoint on that vertically stacked perspective that
yeah,
you in, but my understanding of doom scrolling, understanding of
yeah,
spending hours on Instagram, it comes from that isolation, that anxiety, and then need for gratification. If I'm isolated, I'm anxious, I am feeling sad, and I am feeling down. So what is exciting me? Something that I'm seeing on these scrolls, which honestly in turn also feeds into that isolation and depression, because nobody's posting crying pictures on Instagram. People are
mhm,
just posting about of fun times we had, fun things we did,
mhm,
experiences. So now when you're looking at that, you're like, "Arey, these guys are having so much fun. I'm isolated." Or
mhm,
these guys are really doing great and I don't get to do that. I am not somebody who's adventurous, and the anxiety increases. So it then becomes that feedback loop that you've created. I don't
understood.
know if that answers your direct question, uh,
Uh,
but I think my answer is going towards impact of that doom scrolling and just looking at
no, I mean, I
constant.
can relate to it in multiple ways. Like, for example, as a stand-up comedian myself, I also feel that pressure, right? When I started stand-up comedy, this was when the original industry, there were 50 of us in total in the country. Today, like you can find 500 in Andheri East alone, right?
Yeah.
We didn't even have a YouTube video, forget viral, right? And this
I,
reels and
I, I
everything.
remember that this was what, 10, 12 years ago when you
Yes,
started.
yes,
Uh,
yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. So you guys were there, right? And the original
Mhm.
first things and whatever. So today it's not even as bad about audiences. I worry about young comedians. They see a reel and they think, why am I not able to replicate this? Why am I not getting so much laughter, so many views? I'm like, bro, you are only seeing the final refined. You're not seeing live the 50, 60 times he must have sorted, he must have bombed through it, or she must have tried one bit, it didn't work, then she worked with it, chatted with another comedian, and she gave her 10 different things she could do, and then she shot it again. Then the bit went well. That day the comedy video was not working properly. The other day some idiot audience member interrupted her. It took 70, 80 iterations to get this right, and the 70, 80 iterations process is more valuable than this actual video. Get what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, my work with 1% human, where I consult companies on how to be more human and less AI, is possible because of that 80 work before that. They don't care about my viral Insta reel. I learned about myself and other human beings and assessment by doing those 80 iteration processes. I saw everybody live. I didn't watch other comedians. My career didn't start with watching some viral comedian on video. Hey, I want to be like that guy, right? And I feel like these guys are missing something which is making their life very miserable. Like, I don't know how to explain this uh, to them. Am I making sense from a
Yeah,
psychological?
yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right because they are not seeing the journey
Hmm.
of the final output. They are
Yeah.
just seeing that, oh, wow, this is such a great performance, and now it's got multiple views and hits.
Hmm.
Like, but nobody's really showing that, hey, this is actually what I did to get here, right? And then when as a budding comedian, when they're just looking at that final product, it is feeling like, oh, why didn't I get this?
Hmm. And I think it's also about the best final products are the ones that cannot be planned. Like my best video is Ramayana narrated by an investment banker. It's like my best, like it's masterpiece or whatever. I couldn't have planned life mein I will be an investment banker. I will write this bit while I was still in investment banking. Then I'll get laid off from there. Then this will happen. The journey will happen. Somehow the material will reach this level. And that particular day of that particular recording will turn out to be the correct one, which goes on YouTube and does well, right? It's impossible for me to claim that this is how I planned. I would not even know which video is the one that is actually the one that ends up getting uploaded, right? So the process really is the primary this thing in terms of
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And if my
absolutely.
life partner sees that video and says, hey, I want to marry this guy, can I say, yes, I created this video just to hope that you will find it, right? So I'm not plugging myself in here at all, guys. No personal needs being expressed at all, as you can clearly tell. So yeah, I think that disconnect between is quite a lot. That 43 years went in making that 4.3 minute uh, concept, right? I think is not a very easy thing for a lot of people to process.
Absolutely. And this is, if let's say people who are seeing you had the opportunity to connect with you,
Hmm.
right? If and this on a larger scale, if you get out of that social media scroll and really get out and interact, right? And get to know human mind and process on a deeper level when you're talking to people, you will really understand that this was not cracked in a
Hmm.
day, an hour, or in a month, in a year. It took years,
Hmm.
right? To form yourself, your personality, form your thoughts, right? Sometimes it's intentional that you want to be a comedian and then you intentionally train your mind to like kind of
Hmm.
see because you already have an essence. Now you need to train and you need to be in that space to think like a comedian.
Hmm.
And sometimes you just have the quality within you and then you hone it more and you still go through the process.
Yeah.
And is really showing you that.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just connecting back even to that Instagram or how that's impacting somebody's mental health.
Hmm.
It's really taking them far away from what reality looks like.
Yeah. Let's look at the other side of the equation as well. This is we're talking about the viewing audience. Now, what is happening in terms of the reality perception of the Instagrammer themselves, and where is their mental health getting affected being the Instagrammer? Like, is it that getting more followers can be a curse, rather than a blessing for your self-esteem or your mental health needs in that sense? So,
I think I would see that very similar to any professional or any individual who's building fame,
okay,
right? You look at an actor, right?
yeah.
Budding actor who's received some good, what do you say, applaud for their performance or some good reviews for their performance, or a very, very popular, you know, top of the line actor. Uh, there is a lot of pressure to keep
Mm,
performing, keep creating, to keep churning out, for an Instagrammer, a good reel, a good video, a good idea, a good concept. So the pressure is there. So for the Instagrammer, for the influencer, that pressure is 100% there, which is like any other job, right? If you're doing well in front of the camera or behind the camera, the pressure to perform is always going to be there.
mm,
So I'm not going to say there is something wrong that they're doing. This is a now in this day and age, it is a profession, and being an
mm,
influencer is a profession.
correct.
And y- you just got to accept things that come with time. So yes,
Mhm,
they are there and they are doing their best, right? I think as users also, and as influencers, some responsibility that we all can take is, you know, some responsibility that we can take is actually be more mindful of the humanness of us
mhm.
rather than just creating things more plastic and unreal.
So I think we've become very in terms of like what you said, right? That these are not just now performers; these are full-fledged businesses in that sense. There's even a team behind the influencer. It's not even one person,
Absolutely.
right? So along similar lines, like you are a therapist, right? You are a professional. You're in a lot of ways you handle mental health as well. Okay, you're also a trained professional. But at the same time, with Therapy Villa, now you're also running a business. So I'm kind of keen to understand now what are the challenges of being a mental health practitioner and a businesswoman who also manages a clinic? Is it kind of similar to what an influencer has to manage multiple different, hats? Again, six thinking hats. Edward De Bono, right? Something that when we spoke about the different hats that you
Yes.
wear. So tell us a
Yes.
little bit more about that, especially about the latter, the business aspect of running a therapy clinic, per se.
It's very different. Listen, these two brains are only very different. Being a
Okay.
therapist, I'm using more of my empathetic brain. Being a
Okay.
business person, I'm using more of my frontal lobe, which is where my
Okay.
executive thinking, reasoning, logic, all those functions operate. So
Okay.
literally, they are two different parts of the brain. This brain has not been exercised as much as my emotional brain, just because I was always I didn't know what I would be if not a therapist. I
Okay.
always remembered. So that brain has been exercised
Okay.
from the age of 14.
Okay.
But the challenges, okay, it's very rewarding, honestly, and I really want to credit my husband here as well,
Mhm.
because he's been a very good influence and a driving force. He's an MBA from IIM. So
Mhm.
if I am learning a lot is management and business acumen from him. I was always entrepreneurial, but I think you need a structure, which is what I'm learning from my partner, business partner as well, and my
Mhm.
life partner. But how am I managing? Yes, it's very different because some of my decisions do come from my ethical side of being a therapist. Simple example, charging or increasing my rates, right? I recently increased my rates, my therapy rates here, and there was such a big internal moral, conflict that I went through. But from business side, when you look at it, you're like, oh, this is what you are investing in your own training. This is what you are investing with your time, building your own self. You need to be charging more for all the expertise that you're getting. So these are some very simple decisions. Uh, as a therapist, how I would think, and then as a business person, how I need to think to even meet the inflation today. But running a business is much more than that. It's looking at operations, it's looking at marketing, it's looking at the logistics. It's a lot of team building, right? And I think that team building part comes a little more naturally because being in the mental health space, I think you're also your team is a bunch of psychologists or therapists in,
Ah,
right? So they while there is a very human component to that, like everybody, people can be vulnerable, people can be more honest. People are also very opinionated and very strong in their thought processes, right? Because you had so much time to think about your thoughts, right? Your training exposes you to that. So yeah, that part can be. I really think building your team, having that team influence is one of the key part of the clinic business, because your team is everything. If you don't have good expertise on your team, we're not going to be able to market ourselves as a good mental health clinic, as one of the valuable something, a clinic that can cater to those deeper issues, that can build trust. If our team is not strong in their knowledge, in their training and their experience, so I think that is one of the biggest components. So recruiting, hiring, supervision. I do a lot of supervisions, training, making sure everybody's more at par with the current research as well. Those are some important aspects that I'm a clinical director, so those are important aspects that I'm looking at. Growing the business in terms of what is the need right now in the market, what is the gap, where can we offer, and how can we offer differently, more client oriented. So I think that becomes challenging. I love therapy, but what is now happening as a business owner is I need to choose between providing therapy and working on the business. So a lot of
mhm.
my therapy hours are being cut down because now I really need to focus on expanding, or not just expanding, but maintaining service, introducing new services that can benefit people. People are looking for that service. Um, I don't know if that answers your question to some extent, but that's the juggle now. That's the challenge where I'm leaving my comfort zone, which is therapy, and I'm entering, really tuning into that frontal lobe, working on uh, building the clinic.
So I think you shared something very interesting in terms of business versus the, if I can call it the art part of it. A lot of your work also in some way, there's a lot of artistry also involved in the way a therapist engages. Similar to how a stand-up comedian has to manage multiple things. There's a script, there's the technical aspects also, especially when you're doing online consultations. You have to deal with audience or client sudden deviations and things like that. At the same time, also being an entrepreneur, you know, while having this plane and the other. And I've seen a lot of people clash and suffer with this a lot. How do we balance the two? They feel like you have to choose either being true to your art or your profession, or you can, surrender to the commercial completely. Or there is a very sad compromise where you have to do half compromise on each. And I feel it's there is a third option which allows you to be equally true to both of them. I don't think there's like a choice or a bad compromise, like a middle class of values. Like I call that concept the artepreneur. Like
Hmm.
the art and the entrepreneur can sort of work together. Like I can give you one very specific thing when it comes to corporate comedy shows, especially in India. One rule that I have very clear is 100% advance. Like my proposal says it has to reflect an account, not
Hmm.
on the way ladka nikal gaya, in pros, nothing. Reflect an account latest 48 hours prior to event,
Hmm.
or artist reserve the right to withdraw without intimation.
Hmm.
And you would think that this is a requirement of the entrepreneur. It is not. It is the requirement of the artist because he gets very
Absolutely.
stressed here payment and I do customize material. Should I work on it, not work on it? And the artist is also like the inner child, while the entrepreneur is more like the rational adult. He's like, yeah, I cannot have my inner child being bothered with these things. I have to take care, provide. You should not be worrying about has the payment come, not come. I tackle that nonsense. And to ensure that my artist slash inner child is not bothered, this is a line that is drawn, which is not broken. The artist also will not break it saying, oh, I really want to work with that company, or oh, that HR was so cute. I would love. Nope. This is a line in the sand which cannot be broken. And it works for, or the other one is when the client says, can you provide your script? Oh, but we just want to be sure. No, you can see my videos. I am India's number one corporate comedian. I have enough number of satisfied clients. You can see the logos, you can see the testimonials, you can see my past content. But we want to be sure. No, you either hire me or you don't hire. There is no middle
Yeah.
solution at all. And like a lot of comedians say, oh, corporate shows are where you have to just compromise and this thing, that you have to do whatever they say. I said, no, I've never done anything that they say, not even once. And this seems to surprise a lot of people. I'm like, no, I've drawn a line in the sand. So I have not lost any client except one because of my insistence on not submitting my script. And I have never ever lost any client who's otherwise agreed to work with me because I insisted on 100% advance, not even a single one.
Right.
So I found that there is a way of aligning the two things, and I feel like that's something that you seem to be doing pretty well. There's a lot of learning for entrepreneurs in fields where there's a lot of individual brilliance also involved. It can be quite challenging to manage the two of them. So I'm glad that our audience is getting to learn how to, manage things like this. Would love to hear from you once.
Vikram, you were explaining in a very good, simple, everyday language. And of course, my psychologist brain goes back to, oh, but there is a psychological concept here that you hit the nail on.
Yeah.
And I think something that you've really tapped on is parts of self. I do a
Mm.
lot of work around parts in therapy. And
Okay.
parts of self being, there are different theories which label these parts differently. One theory that I really like, and actually a lot of corporates use it, is called transactional analysis. I don't know if you've come across.
Yes, yes, I've heard we studied in
Yes.
the school, but please go ahead, tell me.
Yes, yes. And it does talk about the parent, adult, and child
Mhm.
concepts, right? So the artist is like that child in you, but then your manager, right, which
Yeah.
is the parent, that this needs to come. And then the adult is just playing the role between balancing between that artist's need to perform, right? And the parents need that payment to time पे आना चाहिए,
Mhm.
right? And then the adult is there just managing and smoothing that conversation with the
Mhm.
HR that, listen, these are the two criterias. How to fit it in is the adult's job.
Mhm.
So that it's a great way for even people to start understanding their self, right?
Okay.
A lot of your drive comes from the child, right?
Mhm.
Kid, you look at a kid is so driven, full of enthusiasm, full of like gratification chahiye, instant chahiye, or just playful, smiling. And that's our drive. And then, of
Mhm.
course, we can't just drive haphazard. And that's where the parent in you comes, the manager in you comes, that,
Mhm.
oh, to help. And this is exactly, I think, true for any entrepreneur or any business,
Mhm.
right? That you want to take some steps which could look impulsive for the business, could look like, oh, you know what? I would love to have, for it, very field specific, I would love to do group therapy.
Okay.
And that's where, as a therapist, I'm thinking that, oh wow, I can have a group can learn so much from each other. But then, as a business owner, the parent part of me is practically thinking, how is the group worth doing? Because the effort that you put in the group is not, what do you say, rewarded by what you get in,
Mhm.
like how many members you get and what you do. So I think something that you mentioned is very right, that you have to balance those two parts of you. And then the third part of you is the adult, which is how do you act in the here and now when these two parts of you inside are really clashing with each other,
Mhm.
right? As an artist, you don't want to lose that gig,
Yeah.
but then as that manager inside you is like, but you don't want to work hard and not being rewarded for that.
Mhm.
So I think that's a great concept you bring in. And even another concept that you touched on right at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Which is those clashes inside. In psychology, there's a term called cognitive dissonance,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Which is that discomfort you feel when your actions, your beliefs, your thoughts, your attitude, when they all clash. And then how do you make peace with it? Right? So, yes, I want to be a therapist, and that's what I've done for all these years. I've been a therapist for 15 plus years now,
Mhm.
and that's all you've done. And then now here you are being asked to build uh, business acumen, how to be an entrepreneur. Having the desire to be an entrepreneur and being one are
Mhm.
totally two different things. So yeah, it has been a rewarding journey where I think it's just working with those inner clashes is a
Mhm.
big part of growing as well. That yes, individually, if you were an individual therapist, this is what you would have done. But now you're thinking of the group,
Mhm.
right? How will the group benefit? How will you build a system into the team? How will the team trust you? Because a
Mhm.
dilly-dally leader is not going to build trust in the team. So I think those are aspects that I have been constantly
Mhm.
working on.
I guess that I have two things to add to that. One was that in my head, I was like, yes, great. There's artist, entrepreneur, fantastic. There's a parent and there's a child. They wonderfully manage. Like, no, there's an adult that needs to coordinate between these two, or else you are thinking that these two form like a nice holy union. It does not quite. Well, there is
No,
a glue that, or else they can just be killing each other, literally, right? So,
exactly,
yeah.
right? So that third entity within you,
Uh,
that adult is actually, because parents can be very dominating, very
huh.
controlling, very
Or
like,
even overly protective and nurturing, also in that
yes,
sense. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I think you read TA well in your preschool.
Hey, Anish, I understand this better than a lot of things. Okay, your wife just gave me a compliment. Are you listening? Uh, so I guess also the other thing that came to my mind is, as we've said, that you don't have to really choose between entrepreneur and your core profession or art. A question would be, how do you feel running this therapy villa as a business has made you a better therapist? My question is.
I don't know if okay, yes, it's made me a better therapist in the sense, if I'm being honest,
Mhm.
I do supervise and train at the practice. And I think when you want to position yourself as a supervisor role, you also need to um, update yourself, maintain
Mhm.
your continuing education, make sure that when you have new trainees who are relying on you, they get the best of you.
Mhm.
So I think in a way it's made me a better therapist because I have constantly worked on updating myself. I have
Okay.
constantly worked on myself. Like even right now, I there are lots of therapies which I work a lot with trauma. My primary
Okay.
population is individuals who've had different kind of traumas, and the whole world is really talking a lot about cognitive behavior therapy, which is working with
Hmm.
your thought. Um, and acknowledging that your body is such a big component and part of you. So there is this whole big world of somatic therapy.
Okay.
Right. So I am right now, I'm an EMDR trained specialist, or a trained therapist, and I'm working on certification. So I'm learning on really honing that skill to be an EMDR certified therapist. I'm training in somatic experiencing, which is a 3-year program. It's a whole understanding how your body is impacted with the kind of trauma people experience.
Hmm.
And it's working with the body, helping people to shift from the physiological, impact of trauma. And it's a commitment. It's a 3-year program. So there are lots of things that I've signed up to just be even, of course, a better practitioner, but also an aspirational leader. When my supervisees are working with me, I want to create some level of motivation for them as well, that you can aspire for these things. You can really train and learn. And these trainings are not just for the sake. They add a lot to your uh, to just how you grow as a therapist and a person.
Hmm.
So
Well,
yeah, it in turn it helps me build to be a better therapist, because I'm somewhere I'm also doing, all this goes to my brand value.
also, I wanted to ask you something as we come towards the end of this podcast. One of the things was, my profession as a stand-up comedian. People often say that laughter is the best medicine, laughter is the best therapy, as if it is the solution to everything it seems under the planet. How much does, realistically, beyond the slogans, how much does humor help in terms of mental health per se, if it does it?
Using humor is one of the skill in that we talk about in somebody's toolkit, because and again, humor is also very, definition is very variable, although there's a definition in the dictionary for it. But how it individual people also use humor as a way of deflection, right?
Ah,
I
correct.
to focus on my problem, I'll just
Yes.
use humor and deflect
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
just like using humor will make it disappear.
Uh, And
uh,
Chandler from Friends is known to be one of the characters to do that quite often. I mean,
yeah,
rest in peace, Matthew Perry. But I think
yes.
it was there in one of the episodes also that he uses it as a coping mechanism or something.
Yes, yes. So whether it's a healthy coping mechanism,
Mm,
or whether it's becoming unhealthy for the person, that is a big part for them to understand and decipher. But humor in general, ability to not laugh off your pain, but
mm,
ability to recognize there is still laughter along with the pain. That I think that is a beautiful essence of humans. And
uh,
recognizing the duality, right? Just because there's pain, that doesn't mean you can't laugh, or
mhm.
you can't. And again, laughing has a lot of physiological
Benefits.
benefits to
Yeah.
it, which is very widely spoken about, and
Mhm,
there is understanding of it. But it's the human body holding the two together, right? There is pain, there is emotional pain, but then there is this laughter, which then
mm,
radiates, right? It helps deal with the emotional pain. That's healthy coping, using humor
mm.
as a healthy coping mechanism.
Okay.
So, yes, even an audience coming to watch a comedy show for those 2 hours or for that hour, leaving their pain aside, that is still duality, right? You've chosen to sit there, engage in something that's more present, engaging with the comedian, engaging in the act, and just for the time being, relaxing and forgetting about. that pain that you've been coming from is therapeutic.
I guess for me, it's always been a little confusing when people would say things like, "You guys do such an amazing job. The stress reduces." And I'm like, "Yeah, what is it that they're so impressed with that I'm doing?" Or they just always be a little bit of a confusing sort of element to it, because I'm inside it, right? So I'm not able
Yeah.
to quite see, yes, I'm doing this thing. And you're saying, this changed my life. It is so amazing. I'm like, I'm not a magician. What? Just like,
Tell me one thing that you
yeah,
do as you're
yeah.
coping.
Um, so yeah, I guess music is definitely. I get okay. Now I get what you mean. When I'm listening, dude, you made this song. I can so relate to it right now. I guess they go through the same experience when they are
Exactly.
watching. Yeah, I get
Right?
it.
Because humor is not readily available to them as a
Mhm,
coping mechanism,
mhm,
right? So they are deep into their day, their stress, their work, and whatever they're doing.
mhm,
And now they're like, oh, these 2 hours, I'm just going to relax, maybe have a drink while watching the show, or maybe
mhm,
just kind of engage in the content. And because Anish says this, and I agree with that. Comedians are like new philosophers, right? Because they look at these small things in everyday life, and then they decipher that, and then
mhm.
they talk about those milliseconds of what happens in that 1 minute
Yeah.
incident or experience that a person has. And it's just sometimes creating epiphany, right? Or connecting with the real part of a human experience and teaching the audience how this is broken down into. There's so much humor. So the next
Mhm,
time when I know you do a lot of corporate comedy, so next time when maybe an employee is sitting behind the desk trying to go through a contract, they're going to think of a joke that you created, and
mhm,
they're like, yeah, these are like funny parts. How can I use humor in my everyday work? Yes, my boss has sent this nasty email. I can learn from what I need to learn and then laugh
mhm.
the anger off,
Yeah.
right? And not hold it as a pain point and let my work being impacted. So it's those additions that people are taking away from your show, which you are not recognizing, of course, because for you, that's work that
Yeah,
day.
I know, right?
But
Yeah.
for them, it's just that break and some human connection, right? Because you
Mm,
understand them.
yeah. I guess one of the questions that I wanted to close with before we come to the final one is if you did not know me as a friend, you know, you just saw me perform as an artist. Would you be able to glean anything about me, my personality, my mental makeup? Is that anything? Is that a relevant question to ask? Does it make sense?
It is a relevant question to ask somewhat, and I'll tell you a little joke before that. A lot of people, especially early career, no? People don't
Mm,
ask me that now, but early career, when your friends start knowing that, oh, you're going to be a psychologist, you're studying for it, or you meet somebody in that young age,
mm,
and when I say young, I'm talking about those 20s,
yeah.
and they ask you, oh, you're a psychologist. The next question I get is, can you read my mind? And no, you're not a book. There are no words. I can't read your mind. Um,
Yeah.
so to answer your question, I don't read minds,
Yeah.
but when I hear someone's even a glimpse of a story, right?
Mhm,
I think now with my experience, with how much I understand about human mind, I won't say I'm able to decipher, but I'm able to understand a a a reasonable part of somebody's. Again, I'm saying part of the personality. I will
mhm,
never claim to say I know whole of somebody, but
mhm.
I can gauge some part of that person's personality if my analytical hat is on. If I've
Mhm.
just come to see a comedy show, I'm just gonna laugh and walk off and not analyze what's going on behind the scenes. But if I
Yeah.
were to, it just gives you, because again, comedians are operating from their life experience and what they
Mhm.
observe, right? There's no script or book that they're reading to be a comedian.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think in then you're bringing yourself to your show. You're not just reading a script there.
Mhm.
And that's what happens in the clinic or a therapy room, that somebody brings themselves and they talk about themselves, and that helps
Mhm.
the therapist to learn about who they are.
Mhm.
uh, so in that sense, you give me a paragraph and I can decipher a chapter,
Mhm.
right? And in therapy room they give me more, and then we can slowly walk through life
Okay.
areas, elements, and
Okay.
experience.
I guess a couple of things came to mind. Like one is the at the intersection of therapy and comedy is this comedy movie which had Robert De Niro. It was called Analyze This.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a hilarious film about a gangster who has a therapist and who drags the therapist into his life, expecting him to be available at beck and call and somehow still do his job despite being subjected to such trauma for which he would probably need a therapist himself, right, to deal with what was. It even had a sequel called Analyze That, also, I believe. So, any of our audience who's listening, check out these movies. It had Billy Crystal and Robert De Niro. All of these remind you how old I am. The fact that half the Gen Z will have no idea who are these people I'm talking about.
Robert De Niro movies are phenomenal.
Yeah. And in fact, the fact that you mentioned 20, young, like in your 20s, that was another heartbreaker, maybe, because I'm twice that age now. Okay, so I was
Yes,
like,
yes, I've
uh,
accepted the reality. That's why in the beginning I said, right, do the math.
I am poor at math and I want to remain that way, especially when it comes to age. And given that we are speaking about age and wisdom and things like that, right? Okay, if you have to leave our audience with a message, what would that be about primarily? What would that be?
One, I know this is spoken everywhere, or there's so many memes about, but self-care is important. Something that I would tell people is even finding that 10 minutes, 15 minutes to nurture yourself, nurture your relationship, to be out there, connect. I really fear in this world of AI and social media where everything is just behind a screen.
Mm,
Uh, I really feel I people are really going to miss that in-person connection. So I really my uh, recommendation to people is see things physically, touch things physically, engage physically, connect physically, take that in the right way. But yeah, be more out there, outside of the screen, real, then you're going to experience real emotions, not just engaging in superficial behind the screen. And I don't want to make it so screen focused, but I know
mhm,
that's where a lot of people's this generation is headed.
mhm. I think one of the things that I've heard a Gen Z expression, and I give it with a lot of qualifications that this is what I think it is. I don't want to be pretend to be one of those old guys. Hey, I get your link. I never want to be that person. Uh, with that qualification and insecurity aside, the term that I've heard is called touching grass.
Mm-hmm.
That like when I was saying, oh, you need to touch grass. Like if somebody is going on crazy on an online discussion, leaving comment, bro, you need to go and touch grass.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the different kind of grass that a lot of people across generations love to touch, and which is kind of illegal in India, but maybe not the same in Canada. Uh,
It's
so there's a lot
actually
of
getting utilized. Side note.
okay, yeah, guys, we are promoting this here on this show, right? Okay, hopefully nobody will shut us down. Okay, I'm just saying. Uh, so that whole thing of it's interesting that the generation which is also the one that has been heavily, you know, ingrained and brought up in digital media is also the one that paradoxically also seems to be valuing physical interactions and engagements also a lot more than some of the previous generations as well. Many of them are also now actively tuned out of, don't like anything that's sold to them as an online medium. Like, for example, there was an article in the Business Standard which spoke about, and now we've gone from storytelling to story selling when it comes to brands. That people don't want to watch an advertisement because they have very short attention span. So you have to show something funny, engaging, and then plug the brand at the end. And there's a part of me that is like, yeah, ye bhi thoda na, this is a bit deception. Like, oh, you thought this was an interesting video. Aha, see, you are trying to sell your product the whole time. I know that I'm probably a very minority to think this way, but I'm like, there is something about it that feels deceptive now. Yeah. Like maybe something like, hey guys, we're being very honest. This is advertising. Maybe something that might even appeal to people. We do a thorough analysis of advertisements and only put those advertisements on our platform, which are reasonably tested for claims. We have professionals from the Advertising Standards Council of India, a few subject matter experts on this thing, and we only approve advertisements on which we genuinely think are useful for you. We do not pretend to be entertainment. We are pure
Right.
advertising, but with some sort of filter. Maybe we have psychologists also on board to see whether an ad is overly promoting any harmful behavior or something like that. I don't know if there's a market for a platform like that, but something like uh, a lot of them now don't like to be fooled
Mm-hmm.
anymore by digital
Yes.
platforms, by anything, by influencers also. A lot of them now do see through it of an influencer trying to sell them on a product or something like that. And I think one of the challenges also being a very influencer-led this thing, you're also leaving your whole life and business on a very shaky foundation of an algorithm that is not in your control,
Yeah.
right? Tomorrow somebody shuts your social media account, that's the end of your business and your identity both.
Right.
Your professional and personal identity have been very heavily enmeshed on a single algorithm. So um, I think that's from a psychological perspective, you could suddenly be without a base
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
altogether to sort of stand on. Uh,
Yeah.
so anything that allows people to use social as a tool to meet people in real settings, right? And that's something I think Gen Z does really well. A lot of older people are also, they set up meets, they set up I've been part of so many communities, different kind of reading books, different kind of poetry events, other open mics. I've been able to do that precisely because of the people who create these events. Many of them are much younger than me. But
Right.
the best part of doing this has been that you're able to connect and grow with a lot of people across age, across different perspectives. Like, I mean, I dated somebody who was almost 10 years younger, and I think for me that was a very enlightening way of looking at life, learning a lot of things.
Right.
I never
Right.
felt like I am the older partner who's more clued on life or anything of the
Right.
sort. She's the
Right.
one who introduced me to Naruto, which in turn introduced me to anime and changed a lot of aspects of my life. So I think I don't know if your children are into anime and maybe too early for them.
Not yet.
I
They're
will
too
make
young.
sure to introduce them. And if that makes your life miserable in any way, I think I will consider it my mission with you. So, you know, also, one of the things that we wanted to consider, because as you mentioned, that the gap between you and other people in terms of how do you ensure that you do not create a gap or rather keep the healthy gap between you and your client or patient, as you may refer to them. And the second is the gap between you and your friends, family members who know that you are a therapist. How do you keep that world separated, essentially?
Right. Right. To answer your first questions, that's where ethics and legal should be in place.
Okay,
I think one of the biggest, when I see my clients, I don't share my phone number with them. They have
okay,
access to my email address.
okay,
They have access to what do you say, our company phone number, our clinic phone number and email address,
okay,
but not anybody's personal number. That is one
okay,
of the biggest way of drawing that separation
okay,
and keeping things confidential. My
okay,
phone is touched by my daughter, my husband, And yeah, so if somebody's sending me any confidential message or
Hmm.
call, I don't want it floating in with my family members.
Understood.
That's the one of the biggest thing why things should be separate.
Okay.
Um, in terms of my own, in terms of where ethics also help is we have a framework here, right?
Hmm.
That if there is crisis, then
Yes.
they know to contact. They
Okay.
know they can contact the paramedics. They know they can contact the cops. That's where
Okay.
system comes into play, right? So
Okay.
educating even the system about mental health, that it is not a crime. If somebody is suicidal and you are called for help,
Yeah.
it is not a crime. So you cannot penalize the person for having those extreme thoughts.
Okay.
Yes, you provide support, you provide
Okay.
rehabilitation. That's the first. So it's a systemic, ethical, legal shift as well
Okay.
that helps a therapist to be more secure,
Okay.
right? Back in India, I've had clients call me at 12 in the midnight saying, I am at the balcony, I want to jump. And this is
Mhm.
real. This is, I'm
Yeah.
not making. And as a therapist, it will scare me, it will disturb me, it will take me out of my space. I am concerned for this person who's reached out to me with so much trust. And I had nobody to call to and say, go,
Mhm.
please go this person's house and make sure that they are safe. So I think that as a system, it's important for the system to work towards it, for
Yes.
for a therapist to have trust in who
Mhm.
should handle what. From a personal level, I told you I've been here for 15 plus years.
Mhm.
It took me a first few years to understand that how much ever I maintain the quality of empathy,
Yeah.
being in your client's shoes,
Mhm.
you're not the client, it's not your life, it's not happening to you. And if you want to
Okay.
be an instrument of change, then you have to show what change looks like. So I
Mhm.
cannot be sitting there. I do tear up once in a while with
Mhm.
my client where my eyes will be wet. I won't be bawling with them,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm a human. I am going to be touched. And I think it's absolutely okay to show that human quality, that what happened to you is very, very touching, you know.
Mhm.
But then also understanding that, you know what, you're here to support them. This is not your life where you're sitting and crying with them. And a lot of your own work needs to be done to have that separation, right? And on the other side with family, because these two things are separate, work is separate, family is separate, I do my best that confidentiality doesn't get breached. I'll be honest, there are times I don't want a relative calling me at the end of the day and complaining or treating me as a therapist on that call. So that gets very difficult for me because I just want to connect with you. I'm not here to play therapist. And
Mhm.
I have actually been more honest and saying you really need a therapist. Please, these are some numbers you can reach out to. Don't get me wrong, but I can support you, but not beyond this. So I think that building that separation in your relationship has helped. Some people have also disconnected because they didn't understand the difference. But yeah, that I think that's occupational hazard.
Yeah, I think everybody has an occupational hazard. As we said today, comedians also have their own occupational hazard. So yeah, we need lawyers sometimes even more than we need therapists. But I don't think we'll need a lawyer for approving today's podcast. I think it's been a amazing, amazing experience. I'm sure the listeners will take a lot away from that, Niyati. Thank you so much. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to share about your plug anything, your company's page, Instagram, anything at all that you like to people to follow or check out?
Like I said, I'm not very big on Instagram, but we do have an upcoming, our Instagram handle is Therapy Villa. And my personal is Niyati Gandhi on Instagram. You won't see a lot of content, but it is upcoming. I'm really working on a new series, which is on making relationships healthier. So, yeah, if you're interested, you could go there. My website is therapyvilla.com, although I am in Toronto, Ontario. But yeah, it does have some good blogs that we post every month, and they're informative.
So, guys, if you're in Toronto, the next time you know who to reach out to whenever you're feeling overwhelmed or want to address any particular element of your life. I know that I will reach out to Anish, telling him that clearly he does not deserve Niyati from what I've get today. Okay. But yeah, he's somebody who's helped me in his own way on a very serious note. Don't tell him that. Okay. Yeah, he's been very useful and helpful to me in a lot of areas of my life. But that's a separate podcast and a separate therapy session with you. Thank you so much for being on the show. Please feel free to share once it comes out. Repeating again, guys, Therapy Villa and Niyati Gandhi are the Instagram handles. You can reach out if you want to know more and take appointments. So, thanks once again for being on the show, and I hope to see you once again.
And Vikram, thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a pleasure. It's my first podcast, and you've broken that ice for me. So, thank you so much for having me and being curious and interested about the mental health world.
Thank you. That's the most wonderful thing I could hear. So, yes, thank you so much. We'll see you guys on the next episode of the 1% Human podcast.